You got a problem, you don't know what to do, your dreams are strange, and you're seeing things too. The world is full of mystery, life's more than you can see. You can ask Pomegranate, you can ask Pomegranate, she's a priestess.
Hello. Today's podcast is an interview I did last year with a woman named Angela Sanders, and Angela is a murder mystery writer. She sells her books at Barnes and Nobles and Fred and Meyers and such places, and she is writing a series of books about a woman who realizes she's a witch and then doesn't know how to deal with that, and then tries to figure it out and like makes mistakes, and someone dies. It's the murder mystery, and then everything gets weird, and then she tries to quit, and that makes it worse. And does it sound familiar to you at all, mystics? that process. So that's coming right up, and she's a delightful, lovely woman, and her name is Angela Sanders, and I'll have her right away. And also, just here to remind you that I have a Patreon page, and I am not teaching anywhere but on my Patreon page anymore. Once a month, I produce a beautiful class. Currently, I'm producing classes about divine ones, deities, gods, goddesses, queer God. And in that class, they're starting to give me an hour-long class where you will meet a god. I'll describe the god to you, and then we'll use that mythology to understand the world by then going into a trance and getting a personal relationship with that idea or being. And then I'll give you a little homework so that you can make that connection and see if that you and that deity are going to jibe and begin to work together. And it's so nice to have gods and goddesses in your life because they're bigger than you and they can provide very specific things. If you go to patreon.com/askpomegranate for $3 to, I think my top end of my scale is like 20 something, for $3 a month, as low as you can go, and you can slide anywhere in there. You can go 10. You don't have to stick with the numbers that are up there. You can have this hour-long class from me that would normally cost you much more. But I just want people, I love this work and I want to get it out there, and you can go, you can tell your friends to go. And also there's a special little place there where if you sign up for it, it's $35 a month. And what you get for that is one, it'll cost, to get a tarot card reading. Actually, it's impossible to get a tarot card reading for me anyway, except for through Patreon anymore. So for about the same cost that it would cost you to get a tarot card reading from me, you can get a tarot card reading and you can get the classes, and you can be a major supporter of me for $35 a month to make my life really work. And I'll, about a year or 10 months after you sign up, I'll call you up and I'll go, let's do the reading. And then I'll give you a 2-hour tarot card reading over this Zoom machine. And we'll hang out and we'll do a reading and you'll get the classes. So there's limited spots there. If you want to get one of those spots, go to patreon.com/askpomegranate. Okay, here comes Angela. She's fantastic.
520-222-9922. You can ask Pomegranate, you can ask Pomegranate, she's a priestess.
Hello, Angela M. Sanders.
Hi, Pom.
I want to say your full name because I want people to know. You're my guest today. This is my guest, Angela M. Sanders. And she's joining us today not because she's a psychic and going to tell us about that, and not because she is a famous priestess or other interesting kind of person in that way, but because
Sadly, no.
Angela is an author. Hi, Angela.
Hi. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time out to do this. You know, it's all fun for all of us to volunteer our time to talk to each other, but it's always interesting to talk, right? So Angie has written many, many mysteries. And I was interested in interviewing you today because a lot of your mysteries involve a little psychic information and a little psychic intrigue. But recently, your two most going to be three most current writings are Cozy Mysteries, which I'll explain to us, about witches, which I thought, how fascinating. And upon reading them and finding them very accurate for actual witchcraft and the way magic actually works, which we'll get into. So one of them is called Bait and Witch. I'm showing it for the video, people. Bait and Witch by Angela M. Sanders. And then another one in that series is 7-Year Witch. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We might also talk about your other mysteries. I have another one of those. What's this one called?
The Lavelle Murders.
Ooh, and that's a vintage.
It's a vintage clothing mysteries. Yeah, there's 6 of those out.
You also have perfume mysteries?
Well, that one, The Lavelle Murders, the latest one, Secret of the Blue Lily, involves a perfume shop in Paris. That's where the perfume comes in.
Oh, and also you write about perfume too.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So anyways, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm just wondering, as an author, it seems like you have veered towards mysteries. As well as perfume, right?
Right. So, in mystery, I guess, well, there was a time where, so before I started writing fiction, I wrote magazine articles, which I loved. Especially, I loved writing profiles. And I thought there was no reason that I would ever write fiction. And then I got this idea for a mystery novel. But then I thought, I don't want to write a mystery novel because I am too good for that. I of course, would be writing hardcore literary sorts of things. And then, but what do I read? I read mysteries and a lot of other stuff, but a lot of mysteries. And so I was talking to a friend and I said, I kind of want to write some fiction, but I'm torn. Should I write like something serious and important, which probably won't make very much money? Or should I write something more popular and fun that'll probably sell better? And the friend looked at me and he said, it really? That's a choice. And then, of course, I got over myself and was like, who do I think I am? What? Right. Writing some sort of serious literary thing that I don't even really like reading that much. So I started writing mysteries. And mystery for me is a good shape to really write about people and write about places and write about community. And then, somebody gets murdered, but that gives you the shape for the story.
And then does someone die?
At least one.
At least one person dies. Who's your favorite? Can I ask you who your favorite mystery author is, if you have a favorite?
I really like the golden age mystery writers. So like between the 1920s and the early 1950s. And one of my favorite authors, in fact, right behind me, I'll see if I can grab one of the tries, is a vintage guy, the Delano Ames. And his books are kind of hard to get a hold of right now, but he's funny and smart. And so I always look for his books. And I'm looking behind me. What else do I have here? Oh, another author I really like is a woman. I always look for women authors too from the golden era, Helen McCloy. And she did a whole variety of mostly standalone mysteries. She has some with detective Dr. Basil Willing, the psychiatrist. And so those are probably my two favorite right now. And then like I sort of have been on a Ruth Ware kick. She's very plot heavy as far as contemporary writer. She's really plot heavy, but super suspenseful. And then, but you don't really get to know the characters and love them quite as much. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head.
It's interesting because as I read Bait and Witch, clever name by the way.
Thank you.
As I read that, I'm only halfway through, but I'm like, okay, so I've already gotten to know this woman. I got a sense of her. I have gotten introduced to Lyndon, the groundskeeper. I kind of understand them. I know about her mother, and her mother's like, and her mother's thousands of miles away. Her grandmother who's dead, even her sister I know about. Plus about a sundry 3 or 4 different characters in the town. I've got a sense, and I can almost smell that library she's in the small in Oregon. That's the purpose, y'all. But she's not from Oregon. And I've got like kind of like it's all fully realized. Even in the first book, you really feel like it, and you can almost. I know what a damp town on the coast smells like, and I know what a library on that damp town might smell like. So
I grew up in the country, and I wanted to write about a little rural town because, for one thing, that's sort of the cozy mysteries usually have some little town so that you can get to know people. I mean, just like Murder, She Wrote, the sort of Cabot Cove thing, so if there's somebody new to town, there's a good chance they're going to end up dead. But so in writing the series, I had 2 big things to work out. One was the community and the place that she was. And there, it's like I could do whatever I wanted. So since I was going to create a library, why not put it in a big old Victorian mansion? So I did, it's like I could do that. And the other thing I had to figure out, though, was the magic. I mean, she's a witch. So what does that mean? Does that mean that she can wave her wand and, people freeze or turn into cats or something like that?
No.
And I didn't want to write anything that was too goofy. It's like I didn't want to get too, because I have read some cozy. So one of the things I did when you people who are authors will know about this, but so to do this series, I had to write a proposal. Since I had written some books before, I didn't have to write the whole first book, Bait and Witch. Instead, I wrote like the first 3 chapters, and then I wrote a proposal saying, "Hey, you want to buy 3 of these books?" And then the editor bit on it, and I had a contract to write 3 of these books. And so I read a whole bunch of witch cozies, and a lot of them just weren't very inspiring to me. The magic was either it was like straight, what I think of as straight Wicca, but you could correct me on that, where it's just like each person had their own gift and they followed all these things on the witch calendar and they did, but it just wasn't very inspiring. It felt like, well, fine, you can just read a lot about Wicca and then read a mystery and you have sort of the whole idea. But I liked the idea of sort of going beyond that. It's like, what is the source of her magic? And how does she discover it? Instead of saying, I'm going to read this book of rules and I'm going to get to know a bunch of witches. And then I do all these things I'm supposed to do, where she suddenly discovers that she has this weird ability to do things. And then she has to figure out how to format that and how to work with that. And then I was thinking, well, okay, so she's going to have this power, this sort of weird, what is it going to be? Well, she's a librarian. Why not books? And I saw this quote. I was in another read-through bookstore, this used bookstore in Mississippi. Now it's closed down, though, sadly. And they had a staircase, and on one of the treads was written this quote by Alice Hoffman. It said, "Books are the only real magic." And when I saw that, I thought, ding, that's going to be her magic, is that she loves books. And when you write a book, there's so much of you that goes into a book. And then when you read a book, so much of you goes in and reflects the book. That's where her energy can come from. And then I just invented the rest. And I've been sort of living in fear that a bunch of witches are going to show outside of my house and go, "You messed this up so bad. This is wrong."
Well, I'm here to tell you did not mess it up at all. In fact, one of the mistakes people make when writing about witchcraft, you don't understand it. And Angie, you kind of understand it a little bit.
Well, because I have, in talking to you and some other people, just, maybe a little bit of understanding. I'm sure I've gone wrong in lots of areas, but I feel like I understand maybe the heart of it.
So far, not. I'll let you know, but so far it's pretty good because a lot of what's happening I don't know if you know, you probably don't know this, but oh, maybe you do because you're writing these books. But there's this thing called the witch boom currently,
I don't
and
know.
it's when witchcraft has gotten zombified. It's been turned into something really popular in popular culture, and so a lot of people are really into it and want to do it, and
Uh,
so it's huge and it's big. And in my day when I was young, I used to do things, and if I advertised that I was doing a ritual or something, I would be guaranteed to meet people who would protest me in the street after the thing as we came out. Like, this is guaranteed that
uh,
there was a violent reaction to it where you
uh,
would get attacked and cursed and all kinds of things. You'd have to kind of go through a crowd to leave your ceremony,
uh,
but that's no more. Now there's a witch boom. So a lot of what's happened with that witch boom in media is that it's been portrayed as this omni-powerful. It's very Disneyfied too. It's like I wave my hand and then sparks fly off my hand and then a thing happens. And that's kind of true. It's a little true if you get good, but
uh,
it's actually we call it the subtle art. And
uh,
so you describe it as actually subtle. What you experience in your body and what you experience around you is not subtle. But what happens and the way it shows itself takes sometimes a little time. And it's more your perceptions that are not subtle, but in reality. So there's a scene, for instance, in your book where there's a scene, for instance, in your book where there's a fire and the whole place gets burned up and all the books go on fire. And then shortly after she realizes, no, that didn't happen. So now I'm confused. Well, that's exactly what happens in the craft. When you're working magic, it feels like something really intense and powerful is happening and the transformation happens. But then when you come into the mundane reality, as I call it, you go, okay, I know this changed something, but I don't know what, but it wasn't what I thought. And that's a subtle way that's a way of describing the intensity that you feel when you're doing it and the subtle changes that happen in reality. And I think that is really hard to write about and to understand. And you have that.
well, thank you. There were two things sparked my mind from what you said. One was that I made her grandmother. So it's not really a spoiler alert, but so she discovers her magic when she isn't, there's no one around who knows what it is to be a witch in her world. And so her mentor is her dead grandmother. At the very end of book one, she ends up with a chest of letters that her grandmother wrote and sealed to her, and each one has a different lesson in it. And no one's been able to open the chest until it comes to her. But so her grandmother, I only refer to it a few times, but if you pay attention, you can see their grandmother is a Christian, but she's also a powerful witch. And so I thought it was sort of interesting to mix those things up. And then the other thing, see, there were 2 points. There are 2 points. I know there were 2 points. What was the other point? What you said was about, she questions too. It's like, well, if I'm a witch, maybe I can move stuff with my mind. And so she tries all this stuff and she can't do it because it's not like she's not, a Harry Potter witch or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
no, you're actually writing about real witchcraft, like what it's actually like. And being a witch is sort of a thing that you get, there is a lineage to it. Like my mother would never say she was a witch, never, ever, ever. But at the end of her life, she revealed to me that her Catholicism was just a cover story. And for her spirituality, which she did not, she was like, this is good. It's the one I was raised in. She said that with an Irish accent, but I won't do it. I saw her use her powers all the time, mostly for gambling at the end of life. She used it for gambling. Never left a casino without more money than she went in with. You tell me what that's about.
right.
So, which you can do if that's your full focus, like it was hers. But you do have it linearly, but anybody can be one. as long as you're willing to train yourself or get trained by someone else, either one. And you have to learn. And so it sounds like she gets trained by her grandmother.
She does it. Right, she does. And I had so the third book, which is called Witch and Famous, isn't going to be out for a year, but I did. Her grandmother has these letters. They're sealed. They're all in a big chest, and then she reaches in and just feels around, and then the lesson she needs comes to her, and she opens it. So I put in each book, except not in book one, because it just doesn't work. So, but for book 2 and book 3, and I want to continue it if the series is renewed, which I think it will be, because it is currently number 11 best-selling mass market paperback at Barnes and Noble. She's yay!
Angie, good for you. That's great news.
I know. I don't know how that happened. It doesn't. Barnes and Noble, I guess, doesn't sell the books it used to, but still, I'm happy about that. But I want to put some sort of a lesson, something that she's learning about in each book. But then I'm just sort of making this up as I go too, and I'm working off the plot. Like in book 2, it has to do with curses, and then land spirits come up related to that. As in talking to you about that, Pomegranate, by the way, was a little bit of a consulting witch for me. Thank you. And then book 3 is about love magic. So I have a letter that her grandmother wrote her about that. And then book 4, which I haven't written yet, I'm thinking about doing something about knowing what is your business to get involved in and what is not. That seems like a witch thing.
Andy, that is the number one lesson that I teach when I was teaching. Is the number one lesson. The first thing you ask yourself, is this my business?
Oh, because she gets involved in people's business because she's solving murders.
Yeah. Oh. So
but then she might, and she also, as a librarian, makes book suggestions, and she just happens to know what the person really wants to read, whether they know it or not. But I figure that's your job, so that's okay. That's her business. Yeah. But yeah, okay, so that's interesting.
Yeah. Yes, we should have another consult about it.
Okay, I would love it.
Because that's the number one thing I teach people is when you're getting psychic information, you have to treat it like once you open up your psychic abilities, don't close it down. It's painful, but you can't really filter out. But what you can do is allow psychic information to pass through you and not be your business. Kind of like billboards on a road when you're driving. You're like, that's not important. That's not important. I'd like a Starbucks. That one's important.
Yeah.
That is my business. And you follow that sign because you want a coffee. But so you really have to know what is and isn't your business. And you have to kind of get halfway through, ask again, get 3/4 of the way through, ask again, is this my business? Because we're naturally empathic and we want to solve the problems of the world, but we can't solve the problems of the world.
Right.
The problem that we have special skills for, and that there's something we can do about. And everything else has to be left to the other 7 billion people on the planet, or perhaps the other 40 billion, palm trees or ants. There's other creatures, spirits, and energies on the planet that can take care of things. You, dear listeners, do not have to take care of everything.
Right.
Codependence in the audience.
Witchy codependency. I never thought about that, but that totally makes sense. You have to know your boundaries. What is somebody else's business and what is yours?
And you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up, and then you're going to learn from that over time. But could you explain to us what a cozy mystery is versus a mystery?
Okay, so cozy mystery, now, you know how it is when you get involved in something, you think everybody knows what a cozy mystery is, but so many people are like, so what does this mean? Do I have to have a blanket on when I look at it? So cozy mystery is basically, it's a soft boiled mystery. It's a mystery where, there's going to be a murder, but language is usually pretty clean. There's generally no sex on the page. It might be hinted at. The murders are there, but they're not, gory. And it's not like, you're not going to see kids dying, and pets definitely are. Any animal that shows up in one of my books, is going to be totally pampered, and they might get lost for a few hours, but that's going to be, or they might have to wear a collar, but that's the worst torture that animal is going to get. So they're books that you just know that they're going to be easy. They're going to be easy and soft and comforting to read.
So far, I'm halfway through, and there's one dead person, and all we know is that there's a dead person.
Right.
We don't know anything else about them, or how they died, or maybe that they're female, but nothing else. They're just
Right. And that's the
they're-
whole thing, is
and
that you
plus-
should, you should be revealing these things like step by step. Like the characters that you know now, hopefully there's going to be some twist and you're going to find that they're not what you expected in the end. That's
Yeah.
my goal.
Yes, I was surprised by Lyndon. So then you go through all the characters, but I mean, it's halfway through and they're now investigating the death. So the death is like there's a dead person, now we're investigating. And it's kind of really interesting and nice. Like I really love murder mysteries. I love real murder mysteries. Like everybody, the big podcast fad for
Oh yeah.
so many of them now. There's even a show on Netflix somewhere, Hulu, that has Steve Martin's made a parody out of,
Oh yeah.
murder podcast, which is funny, by the way.
That it is.
I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering about how we are so interested in murder and why are we so, I'm fascinated by murder. And I hear people say things like, oh, he's not capable of murder. I'm just like, why do you think we're so interested in murder?
I know. Well, okay. For writing a mystery novel, I think murder just becomes a structure that gives you high stakes. So you want to solve it because there's high stakes. Somebody was killed. And then as one author I heard, Tom Perry, said, a plot, so a murder plot in this case, is just the bucket you carry the story in. So the really interesting parts of the story for me are the relationships and the characters and the stakes and the plot. They just sort of keep the story moving along. But I think murder is interesting because it's something I would never do, something that I'm not thinking you would do, but maybe I'll be telling the podcast that comes after you murder a bunch of people. It's something differently. You never would have expected it. But no, you wouldn't do that. But so, and then it's so foreign. So it's like, I think just trying to figure out, like, why did this happen? How did this happen? For me, it's not the act of the murder that is interesting. It's figuring out why, like, who would do that? That's so against society and community to murder someone. It's just the why. What?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts about it. Like, one is we have been, death has been relegated to the back room, so we don't get to see it or hear it. And then we're constantly shocked by death. We're like, death? And it's like you're eating your chicken. You can forget that.
Right. Yeah. That used to be running around in the yard, right?
Everybody needs to understand death. I kill something and then I eat it. And I have a direct relationship with death. One of the things that witches do is celebrate their relationship to the other side, to death, to their ancestors. The Protestants kind of got rid of that. They got rid of ghosts and deaths and ancestors when they came in, took over from the Catholics. And so there was actually big rules against it. So that has been distanced. It's starting to come back with, I think, with the witch boom and with the psychic boom. Even the zombie shows, I think, are trying to remind us we all are going to die. And so I think murder mysteries help us stay connected to the idea that we're going to die. And we have death in the world.
That totally makes sense to me. It's a way to sort of safely look at it. It's here in your book. It's in this other place. And justice is done, too. Yeah. That's another beautiful part of the book. Justice is done.
And for me, I think about, when I hear about people talk about murder, I'm like, well, yeah, what we have to remember is that humans are predatory. And if we, another thing we've gotten out of relationship too is our own internal predatoriness. And every single one of us is predatory. And you get stimulated in a particular way, you're going to murder someone. Every single person on the planet is capable of it. Just because every single one of us is capable of predatory. And we learn ways to handle that predatory nature. And then we get shocked when someone has not learned that. Or have not been.
I bet over generations too, it's like it's bred into us. The ones who are predatory are sent out of the community or killed. The ones who are more overtly that way. And the ones who can live more in community, over centuries, that would build up more.
It's true. We isolate people who have not been in an environment where they can learn to handle the predatory nature. And we shove them out to the edges where we breed more predators. And it's culturally, it's very strange. In Ireland, in Brennan law, there's certain things, which is an ancient law of Ireland. There are things done where you don't breed it. You accept people's predatory nature, and you go. There's a different. It's not a punishment style. It's a rehabilitation style of law. It's very ancient law called the Brennan law. I'm studying it right now a little bit, and so it's our ancestry, Angie. So it's like really like very fascinating to be in the polar opposite culture where it's punishment. Then we breed it, and then we put it away from us. We go, I could never do that, and it's like I'm perfectly capable of murder. I just don't do all the things that support it. I do all the things that don't support it. Right?
Well, that is interesting. That gives me something to think about.
You can ask Pomegranate. You can ask Pomegranate. She's a priestess.
So tell me about this character and the main character of these witch books. Tell me about her.
Well, she was born in a family of witches, which carry on through the women, and her mother didn't want anything to do with this power. Her grandmother, and so her mother convinced her grandmother to shut down. Her name is Josephine. Josie and her two sisters were each named after French queens. So she's Josephine, but they call her Josie. And her sister Marie Antoinette is Tony, and Eugenie is Jean. So Josie, because her father was a history professor at like a community college in Maryland. So Josie didn't really know that she was a witch. And so the spell dimmed everything about her, though. When it shut off her magic, it shut off a lot of things about her. And she just was not as involved in the world around her, but she still loved books. She loved books so much. When that spell is broken, all of a sudden she can see things, taste things, smell things that she never really could before. It's like her life sort of explodes. And she has this weird power that slowly starts to seep in that she's wondering if she's lost her mind. She doesn't know exactly what's going on. And so, but personality wise, really, I have to say, I think I could have. So there's sort of some different ideas. When you're an author, you can make your main character somebody who has a lot of character, or somebody that the reader can easily slide themselves into. And I think Josie is more that kind of person. She has the things that she likes and not, and certainly as the books develop, and as she really finds herself getting more and more interested in the world and more able to see more, she becomes a little more her own person. But I think she's somebody that I hope a reader can identify with pretty easily. And I gave her, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, so I gave her red curly hair because I have red curly hair, and as do you, because all my other heroines, I've given every other hair. And I thought, I'm just going to give her my hair because I know how to deal with it. I can talk about it, So that's her other characteristic. And her cat, Rodney, who meets up with her at the library.
Yes, her cat is, it's interesting. Her cat is very bossy.
Yeah, like her cat is. You've never had a bossy cat?
Oh, yes. Every familiar I've had one familiar, every familiar one, was a very bossy cat. She was very bossy because when they're your familiar, it's their job to boss you around and tell you what to do. So Kevin's familiars mostly make him go to bed. They're like, go to bed now, You're not in bed. Why are you in bed? We don't have cats now, so I have to do it instead. But
well, I've been edging around this idea of a familiar. I didn't want to come right out and say, this black cat that showed up is her familiar. Because I thought, well, it's kind of cliche, it's a black cat, but I have a black cat. In fact, I'm surprised she's not walking around on the desk right now. And I just thought, why not make it a black cat? But I have never said familiar. I've just sort of, this cat's, she gets along. This cat, somehow she knows what this cat is thinking. And the cat have an idea of what's going on with her. But I've never said, this cat is her familiar. It's like because she's not using that sort of language. She doesn't know what she's doing. And she knows she's a witch.
She doesn't know about it.
Yeah, but this cat,
That's the way it goes. It's like when I figured out I was a witch, I didn't know anything about it. And it was before the witch boom, way before the witch boom. And so where I was like, what do I do with this? I think I might be a witch. Okay, how do I do this? Want to play a psychic game with my friends? And they're like, sure. And I'm like, because it was made clear to me I was very psychic because I saw things that were about to happen and then they happened. And then I have been talking to my spirit guides my whole life. So I understood it now because I was like, okay, what I can do with this power is I can use an ancient path to learn about it. I had the power. I just didn't have the ancient path. So I learned the ancient path. And that's sort of what your character does too.
Yeah.
Grandmother. Now I will say my mother, who's not a witch, was not a witch. I learned things from her too. Which she used her psychic powers. I learned things from her, but then I had to go and get actually educated, right?
Well, there were a couple things in Bait and Witch that I put in directly because of you, because I remember you saying just like little things. That's the other thing. When you're a writer, I think everything that goes in transforms itself and eventually comes out in fiction if it sticks at all. Neil Gaiman once said that his mind is like a compost heap and stuff grows from it, maybe not exactly in the form it started in. And I feel like that's true. So there are a few things I remember from you. Like I remember you saying offhanded that you could be in the kitchen cooking with your sisters and you just knew what each other needed or was doing or to move out of the way. So Josie does that. She reflects back on that with her sister. That's because of you. The other thing I remember, this has not gone into the book, but but it could, is I remember sitting next to you at a brunch and this bagel fell off the tray. And I said, oh, I'll eat that one because I want to be, a good guest. I could eat the bagel. It fell off the tray. It's not a big deal. And he said, oh, but it's raisin. You won't like it. And I thought, I never told you I don't like raisin bagels. I never said that. And I just, picked up the next day and passed along the tray. I didn't say anything. because basically I will eat just about everything. I mean, it's kind of a problem, but not raisin bagels.
I don't remember that, but I believe you.
No, why would you? But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm in my studio for those of you who are looking visually. And by the way, there's a weird delay on Facebook today. For the audio people, it'll be fine, but for the people looking at the visuals, all of these paintings that are in progress, they're not painted yet, are about moments of witchcraft. And they're about that kind of moment when you're alone by yourself, maybe there's other people there, and you're doing something. You're setting your intention and you're channeling. And it feels like she does that with books a lot, where she does book romancy, and maybe that's the wrong word. But
bibliomancy.
That's what it is, bibliomancy, which I think anybody who's psychic has accidentally done.
She starts doing that in book 2. My editor was like, put in more witchcraft. I want more witchcraft. Book 3, as she's getting more hold over her powers, there's a lot more stuff that goes on. But bibliomancy shows up in book 2. And I wanted to put in that the idea that some things aren't obvious. Like you could say you opened a book. Let's just choose a book and open. We'll have a Panic by Helen McCloy.
Okay.
Say you open it. This is, I don't know, for people who can see, it has a super great old cover. Okay, so I'm reading this. Random sentence. If he had, he probably wouldn't be up here in the mountains, objected Yolanda. So that's pretty literal. If he had, he probably wouldn't be up here in the mountains. But what if you wanted some response to, you had a love question? Maybe it's not so obvious as that. Maybe it means that, you have, I don't know, you have the mountain is like this big obstacle somehow. And maybe you're thinking you need a big obstacle to love, but really it's not somebody who's up in the mountain. It's going to be easy, or, that maybe the answer isn't so obvious. So I try to get that idea across in book 2.
Yeah, that's great. That's good, because that's the thing. Like, we call it book divination. I do it with radios. We've done it with videotapes when we used to have videotapes. Where you ask a question and then you fast forward for the videotape and then reverse it and then fast forward and then go, you have to pick a good movie. Moulin Rouge works really well. And then you go, stop. And then whatever the first sentence is your answer.
And people wonder, why do Pomegranate's tapes always get all frazzled up and end up shooting out of their cases?
I've wrecked video cassette players. I've wrecked them doing this. Also, there's the search and scan on your car radio. You can do it that way. You're asking a question, you just hit scan and then go stop, and then whatever is on the radio is your answer.
Oh.
Limited, can do stuff that's not as good as books. Books are better.
Books are so much variety, but I think just like not being super, or maybe something could be super obvious too. Maybe it is really plain. It's just so, like when you think about dreams, maybe something can be super obvious. I remember once having a dream, and it was a light came on a porch, and there was something there, and then I realized it wasn't about porches. It wasn't about light. I think it was just the literal translation of shine a light on it. It's like there's sometimes there's weird ways to take stuff that bibliomancy might be part of it. It might not be super literal, or it might be super literal.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it really is, especially if you ask a question first before you do it, and then you find out. But I'll bet that mountain one was for someone who's listening right now.
Ooh.
All right. Well, okay, let's take a little break.
Okay.
And then we'll come back with more of Angie.
520-222-99-22. You can ask Pomegranate. You can ask Pomegranate. She's a priestess.
Okay, Angie. So your books are available all kinds of places, right? Barnes and Noble. Where else are they available?
Well, so I have some traditionally published series, and I have some independently published series. So the Vintage Clothing Mysteries, and then I have 2 capers and the Booster Club caper books, which are about a retirement home of petty criminals. Those are independently published, so you can order them at bookstores. Powell's often has them on the shelves, or if you can download, for your Kindle or your Nook or anything like that too.
And it's also available on Audible. These Witch books are available on Audible if people like to listen to books.
Yeah, so the Witch books, and then I wrote a prior series under a pen name, Clover Tate. Those are out of print now, but they show up. But the Witch books are in print. You might even find them at Fred Meyer, Walmart, places like that. They've been showing up.
For those of you who live on the West Coast, and those of you who don't, there are no Fred Meyers. But
it's drugstore, grocery store,
superstore, kind of a superstore kind of place. I'm going to share your website, Angela.
Okay.
So people can see who are looking. So her website is angelamsanders.com. There you will see a fabulous picture of her in a vintage clothing store, holding a mannequin and her beautiful hair.
And see, there's some shooting going on in the background. It's a big crime scene in progress.
Oh, he's got a gun.
Yeah, see that? And she's stealing jewels, that other mannequin.
Oh my God, he's a very jaunty gunman, I must say. He's very dapper. Let's go to the Witch Mysteries. I'm just going to switch over to the Witch Mysteries.
Oh yeah, I need to update that. Look, 7-Year Witch barely has anything.
Yep, it's out now.
I know. I've got to put in some more there.
They're fun.
And I've got some more great reviews too. 7-Year Witch is a star review with Book Page.
Woo!
Which is pretty great.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. Then I'm going to show to others, there's a Vintage Clothing Mysteries. If you like vintage clothing and mysteries, oh my God, there's some funny scenes in these books.
I really think books should be funny. I think if I had to have a motto to put on my family shield, which I don't because I was raised in a trailer in the woods, the motto would be, "Life is a glorious freak show," because that's what I believe.
Scent to Die, scent as in smell to die is one.
Yeah, Secret of the Blue Lily, the covers. That's the tagline you're seeing, Scent to Die.
Oh, it is?
So, Secret of the Blue Lily.
Oh, Head Case. The Halston Hit. Oh,
that's drag queens.
I mean,
got drag queens.
Oh, girl, we can't stop talking about Halston. What's this one called?
Slane and Scaparelli.
Ah, you've got a lot of them. Dior or Die. What a great name. And the Lavalin Murders.
Yeah.
I think I'm in that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then there's the Booster Club Capers.
Those are the ones that center around the retirement home for petty criminals. These are actually my favorite of the books I've written. They have the worst sales, but I cracked myself up so much writing them.
I mean, they would make great movies.
I think they would.
I'm casting them in my mind already. The Booster Club and Cat in a Bag. So yeah, there's lots of books to go and see. And can people buy the books from here?
No, there's links.
You can link, but you can get linked to where you can buy the book, Kindle the book, iBook. I don't know what you're going to do with these books, lots of different things. So that's available. Angie, will you, is it possible to ask you to read a passage from Baton Witch or 7-Year Witch?
You know what I would like to read, mostly because I want your feedback on it because it's coming up. I would like to read a passage from a book that won't be released for another year. It's the third one in this Witch Librarian series. And I wanted to read the grandmother's letter, her letter that has her lesson in it.
Okay.
And then love magic is the sort of theme for this. So let me put on my lunettes here. So I'll read this to you. I don't think it'll take longer than 3 or 4 minutes.
Take your time. Everybody wants a cozy mystery read to them right now.
Okay, here's your cozy. Sit back, get cozy. And it's all written in the first person. So my fingers, and Rodney is her cat, because Rodney shows up in this. My fingers trembled as I slid a paper knife under the envelope's flap. I slipped out the folded sheets of paper inside. At the top of the page, in my grandmother's handwriting, were 2 words, love spells. I read it again to make sure. Yes, it was about love magic. Come on, Rodney. I nudged him from the chest, relocked it, and pushed it back under the bed. This should be interesting. Rodney and I settled in the armchair by the window with the faraway soundtrack of Verdi and the wind through the cottonwoods along the Kirby River. I smoothed open the lesson and let my grandmother's voice read it to me. As always, the honeyed warmth of her words rippled through my heart. Dear Josie, I wonder how you felt when you saw the words love spells. Were you excited? Perhaps there's someone you'd like to enchant, or maybe you felt dread. As I write this letter, you're playing in the garden with Grimbley, the ginger tomcat who never fails to alert me when the mugwort is ripe for harvest and the morel mushrooms have come up in the woods behind the house. You're barely 6 years old, and you have no inkling of the power you'll have, the magic the star-shaped mole on your shoulder promises. If you're reading this, you're a woman now. Whatever you felt as you unfolded these pages, you were right to think that love magic isn't to be taken lightly. Love holds immense power. It's a strong, healing, nurturing power teeming with its own magic. Think about it. Can't you feel the love someone has for you simply by entering a room? Combined with reason, love can heal nations and uplift the saddest and most hopeless among us. However, the desire for love holds an entirely different power from love itself. And when it's frustrated, it can lead to depression, destruction, and even murder. The desire for love can destroy what real love is all about. It can make a thwarted lover want to bend someone else's will so that she will desire him, no matter what the object of his desire wants for herself. A witch must be very careful when influencing the lives of others. Using magic to protect yourself or other people is one matter. Using magic to divert someone's destiny is quite another. When working with love magic, you must remember this. Love and the desire for love are not the same. As an aside, the ability to attract romantic attention, a quality we call glamour, is not the same as being lovable, although it can mimic love's effects in people who fall under its spell. People who aren't too wise, that is. You don't have to be a witch to possess glamour. It's a trick of charm and unspoken promise, and it disappoints as often as it thrills people swayed by it. That said, as a witch, you have the ability to bend love's potent power. Use it with discretion and great thought, and you can accomplish good. But I can't urge you too strongly to be very, very careful. In my grimoire, by the way, she hasn't opened the grimoire yet. It won't let her. You'll find recipes for love potions I've tested. Remember Mrs. Blandstone, the pastor's wife? When Pastor Blandstone became so obsessed with the book of Deuteronomy that he'd hardly eat, let alone look at her, I prepared her a dose of see me. You'll recall they eventually had 6 children. When Jeremy Bush was on his deathbed and full of resentment over his meager life, I put a few drops of family bonds into his medicine, and he died grateful and full of love for his children, who truly did adore him, the old coot. However you use this lesson, Josie, you must certainly feel my love for you now. So that's the lesson in book 3.
Angie, I cannot believe how accurate that is about love spells and the nature of love spells and how
it made sense to me. I tried to do a little bit of online surfing around, but there was a lot of stuff about, burning pink candles and things like that.
love spells are some of the most dangerous spells you can do because they're done out of that undifferentiated desire that you talk about, which is love is unconditional. Actual love is unconditional, right? And you're differentiating between unconditional love, which is like, look, I want love for you. I want it to be with me. But if it's not going to be with me, I hope you get it. That's unconditional love. And most people do it out of the love spells out of that desirous place. And then you get it locked into bad situations, controlling situations. And it's something a young witch does. They go, I need to do a love spell. And you're like, no, you're not. Please don't. And then you're like, I am. And you go, please do that away from me, because when the disastrous results happen, I don't want to be here. It's probably one of the most difficult spells you can do. But if I was going to write a passage on how to do it right, I would have written that.
That is so good. Well, she does end up eventually, she almost, she makes the potion, which was a whole different thing. I also had to invent how all that happened. And I will just give you one little hint. The cat gets into it.
Well, the familiar always comes along and does a little, does something that either, because familiars can be quite trickstery, right? They can trick you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The cat gets into it and there's a Pomeranian involved.
Yeah. Cats are interesting, and familiars are interesting because they communicate through pictures to your brain, and they can't understand words as much. They understand a few words, but they can understand a picture really well and symbols really well. So if you think of a symbol to a familiar, they'll get you. They'll understand. So like if you don't want them to do something, you imagine a big red X.
Oh, through it, like get off the counter or yeah.
Now they'll remember that moment. Maybe tomorrow they won't remember there was a big X. But if you want them to do something, you like what they're doing, you give them a big green check mark, and they go, okay, I get it. Sure, I get it. Thanks a lot for letting me know. Or if you're leaving town, show them where you're going, and then show them, like imagine days going by, moons and suns rising and setting, and then show yourself returning, and that calms them down quite a bit.
Oh, I'll have to try that.
Yeah. They may still be mad, but they go, okay, you're coming back. It's going to be this long. I just want to know what's happening. They just, what's happening. So yeah, that was a really good spell. I wonder if when you write, do you ever feel like you're channeling, or what's it like to be an author, or?
I outline my books. I plan the plot, not in a ton of detail, but I have an idea of what's going to happen. But then I might sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write the scene. In the scene, Josie is going to go to the library and she's going to discover a letter in a book. Say, I just made that up. Mm-hmm. And so, and I know it's a summer morning. And so I'll start writing the scene. And then there's all kinds of stuff that I never thought about that starts happening. Like, oh, well, this person comes into the library and, oh, she's, there's coffee's upsetting her stomach, which leads to a particular something else. And like all these things start happening. I think I know what I'm doing. I think I'm just filling out the scene to get to the next scene. But there's a whole movie that needs to happen. It's pretty wild.
Even in a way, a lot of authors, and it seems like you, are in touch with somebody who's telling you really accurate magical information. Like I feel like somebody is gardening this book, because you don't talk to me about every single thing. You talk to me occasionally about a little bit of something you get stuck on, but I'm not have anything to do with this. You're doing this all without direct knowledge. I think somebody's talking to you.
I would love it. I think that would be cool. It would be great to have a name. And I can create in my office. I could put together a little sort of shrine with a, here's this to you. Thank you. You can just relax here while I write. Feed me ideas.
It's great. I think somebody is doing that for you, and that's great. You probably could just write a little passage about her and find out.
If there's anybody, I would think it could be my grandmother, because my grandmother, first of all, loved writing or reading. She loved reading. Basically, she read every Barbara Cartland that was ever out there, which is a lot of books. And she was obsessed with Murder, She Wrote. She would sit in the RV with my grandpa and like rotate that little satellite so she could continuously watch Murder, She Wrote through the hours.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was your grandma. I was thinking about her, and then I was thinking about, is she influenced one of the characters in the book?
Well, whenever my grandmother, I loved her so much that if I think about a beloved grandmother, then I have to, some part of my grandmother goes there.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it was her. I was thinking that before you said it, I was thinking it. So
okay.
It might be her.
I would love that. I think she would enjoy it too.
Yeah, well, she knows a lot now because she's on the other side, right?
Yeah, she was such a Catholic. She would, but she also had her own brand of Catholicism. She kind of made her own religion. Like, divorce was okay. The Pope might not agree with her, but she said, God just wants you to be happy. And if you are happier out of the relationship, then that's what God wants. So, she was a devout Catholic. She did her rosaries constantly, but she had her own take.
You can ask Pomegranate. You can ask Pomegranate. She's a priestess.
Okay, so how did you become an author? What inspired it? How do you keep going? What's it like to be an author? Can I just ask that question?
Yeah, it's just like anything in life, you do the next thing and the next thing, and you don't think. Every once in a while I'll meet somebody and they'll say, oh my God, you have books that are published. And I just think it's really not that big a deal. But I know, 15 years ago, if I had met somebody who had books published, I probably would have thought it was kind of interesting and cool. But, when you do it, you just don't think anything about it. So every once in a while I get emails from readers and I respond to them for the most part. And sometimes I'll write back and say, I can't believe an author has written to me. Because it's not that big a deal. So you just sort of do the next thing and the next thing. But I guess I would have thought like, oh, if you're an author, first of all, you have this office. It's got like a chaise lounge in it. And you get to go to readings. They fly you to New York. You're making a decent, you get these advances which allow you to live. No, I am so scraping by. I have got so many side gigs here to unfortunately, I can live well for cheap. So money is definitely not why I write. I think I love stories, and everything becomes a story. It's just a way of being in the world. And like I said, life is a glorious freak show. There's so much, there's just so much that is so fascinating that is going on. I can't help but see the stories. And people say, oh, you've had this fascinating life. No, I haven't. Everybody has a fascinating life. Everybody has. I learned that when I was writing profiles, and they would send me out and say, go interview this potato farmer. And I didn't know what the story was going to be, but I knew there was going to be a story, and there always was. It's just that some people see the story and some people don't. And so for me, I always saw the story. I was at one point for 11 years of my life a congressional investigator. And that was fascinating. I liked the mental problems. I lived in DC. I did some of it out here too. I traveled around the world. I liked the problems of policy and figuring out what was going on. But when I went into somebody's office, I was fascinated by their office, by the pictures of their family on their desk, by wondering what the person was like, by the way that they wore their shirt tucked in a particular way. Those people were stories to me. And that was so much more interesting than whatever I was gathering information on. So I just think I always kind of was a storyteller. And my grandma, in fact, told me, I was like about 6 years old, well, you're going to write books, right? I didn't think I would, because I grew up super poor in the woods. So I needed to do something that was going to make money. So then I got a bachelor's degree in economics. Economics? Now I look back, it's like, you crazy. And then a master's in public administration. Why? And then I found out I could be a government person. I could have this job. And then I rejected it. I got on the grease pole to poverty and happiness. I'm happier than I've ever been. And finally became more myself. So that's kind of my story. Oops, I feel a cat down by my hand.
The cat comes to say a few things.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't. How do I not know any of this stuff about you? I didn't know you were a congressional investigator or that your degree was in economics. What's wrong with me? I am not much of an investigator.
It's kind of like, it's part of my past, but because it's part of my past, it's part of who I am, but it's not. It's like I had to do this thing so that I could return to really the person I am. And the person I am doesn't want to wear suits and testify in front of Congress and sit in a cubicle. The person that I am wants to be an excellent thrifter and cook delicious meals and write stories about witch librarians and other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, one of the primary characteristics that you possess that I notice about you is you are extremely observant. And then when you report that observation, it's very kind. So you're observing the loveliness around you and the oddities around you and the different qualities around you. And you don't observe and then go, and then this terrible thing, and then that terrible, and then I thought this about, sometimes I think we're trained as females to be very observant and then to attack and criticize other people. And I've never heard you, I've heard you through some difficult times. I've never heard you do that. I've heard you complain about people who are not being good, but mostly you're just very kind and your observations are actually pretty uplifting.
That's nice. I feel like I'm an optimist, but I certainly, I get really irritated with people though too. And I feel, I don't think of myself as that kind. I don't think I'm mean, but
No,
thank you.
You're not mean or cruel. And your books are, I'm really happy to report your books are like you. They're uplifting, interesting, fascinating, and so far halfway through, good witchcraft.
Wow. Well, good. I mean, if I can make, you think about like, what is your purpose in life or what gift do you have? And I feel like if I have a gift, it is that I can see, especially when my mind is clear and I'm feeling good, is I feel like I can see beauty in everything. Everywhere there's a story, there's something fascinating or funny or interesting everywhere. I feel like, if you forced me to live in a little shack in the backwoods of Milwaukee or something, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I'm thinking, I would see, that I could do it and be happy. And so if I can help people see that there is beauty everywhere in their life and that they don't have to live this, this boring humdrum, what they think of this life of like, I've got to make the money. They call it work for a reason, that sort of thing. If I can help people see that there is a lot of beauty and wonder in life, and that if they can adopt some of that perspective, then I feel like I will have accomplished my mission. And then if I can give them some entertainment and help them pass a few hours too, then I'm happy to do that. I think that's what I have to give. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a fabulous harpist or something. It's like I'm a storyteller.
Well, that's part of how you can know what's your business. You can know what's your business because it brings you a feeling of peace, or not happiness, but joy. It brings you a piece of joy. Because happiness is a little like, yay, I'm happy, which is kind of a temporary position, whereas joy is a base note. And that peace or joy or wellness, then if it brings that to you, then it's your business. Because writing is not easy, and yet you keep doing it. You keep going back in and writing. Is there any tricks you have for anybody who wants to get going as a writer or get themselves to write? Any tips for that?
Well, I feel like everybody's brain is different. Everybody's work styles are different. I've done some writing coaching, and I'm going to be starting to offer some group coaching coming up too, because I feel like Well, people sometimes just need help getting on being part of the writing life, but everybody's brain is different. For me, what works, and I think for what a lot of people, what works for them is just to make a habit out of it. And if you have that feeling, that little bit of a high, just like you're talking about when you're writing, you might not want to sit down and start, but if you are 5 minutes into it, you'll feel that high and it will keep you going through the writing session. And then it's just a matter of getting in the habit of starting, because it's the starting part that's like, and then if you put it off to later, right after dinner, although I have one friend who writes all night. She writes amazing novels, and HarperCollins is coming out with her second one. She's doing super well. And she writes all night. She gets up at about 3 p.m. and gets on with her day, eats one meal a day. I don't know how she does that. But I think just making a habit of it. And for me, that means doing it every day. And also sometimes writing is not sitting at your computer. Sometimes you're writing if you might be the sort of person who needs to think through your story to make it into a sort of movie in your head before you sit down. And that might mean you're writing when you're working in the garden, when you're vacuuming, when you're mending, when you're just walking through the neighborhood. It's an important, maybe essential to you, part of the writing process. And then you sit down and you put your fingers on the keyboard or your hand to a pen if that's what helps you.
That's good. That's good advice. I mean, one of the best advice I got from being an artist was from R.V. Smith. And he's an amazing painter, and Angie and I both know him. And he said to me, just go sit in your studio. It doesn't matter if you do anything. Just every day, go sit in your studio. Mm-hmm. And that's why my studio is in my house, because I'm like, I can just go down to my studio and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter what happens. Mm-hmm. I am present with the work. So mm-hmm. just go sit where you will write. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to hear you're going to be coaching. Let me take a little break and then we'll come back and hear more about that and where people can get in touch with you if they want to learn to write. And I know you have a great deal of joy in writing. Learn to write it with joy. This is what I think.
Yes.
All right, let's take a little break and we'll come back and hear about that, Angie.
520-222-9922. You can ask Pomegranate. You can ask Pomegranate. She's a priestess.
Okay, now, so I'm excited because I want people to know about this. I didn't know this, you are coaching people and you're going to offer some coaching online for people around the world to tune into if they want.
I want to offer, so I do one-on-one coaching, but it's expensive. And, if somebody's like me, they can't, you might want some help getting your writing practice going, dealing with particular issues in your work, but you can't afford to pay somebody like $75 an hour. So I decided I would start doing group coaching for 8 students maximum by Zoom, an hour and a half at a shot. I haven't figured out the pricing, but it's going to be quite a bit less, maybe $30 for an hour and a half. And then meet every other week with assignments in between, and then really make sure everybody has time to look at their work, and then that every issue becomes a learning opportunity for the rest of the people in the group. For instance, if somebody comes to me and they have a scene that they want to talk about in the next class, and maybe I read the scene and decide that it's a great scene, but there's some pacing issues, then I would do some research on pacing with some resources and then talk about the particular scene, its strengths. I think people should always know what their strengths are. It's so easy to point out the not strengths, but I think we should always be emphasizing our strengths. And then talk about pacing. So it's something that everybody in the group can learn from then. So I'm going to do sort of a soft launch in a couple of weeks. And then in January, really put a page on my website and go into it in more depth. But I love teaching. I love talking. I teach at Clark College already. I love talking about writing. And I think it'll be fun.
I mean, my God, it's going to be amazing. I mean, also, I'm going to talk you up on that price because that's way too low. Everybody,
But if
plan
there's
on paying more. Everybody, I charge $100 for an hour or for 3 hours, and that's all you get. So, like, I think maybe you're gonna increase that price. If you get that price, everybody, you're really super lucky. Just be really, really happy you did, because look how much work this is going to be for her. So, but it's great. And Clark College is in Portland, Oregon. So if you're in Portland, you might want to look up what's your class called, Angela?
So it's the one I'm teaching right now. Actually, the class starts tonight. It's through Cockroach on Zoom. So I have students across the nation. This one is called How Done It, How Authors Craft Their Mysteries. And in each class, I interview a different, pretty well-known mystery author. And it's not recorded. So we ask everything about money, about rejection, about what to do when you just can't write. I'm really planning. And there are people I all know to some extent personally. So I feel like I can really get in there and get the questions. So that's what we're doing in that
Okay,
class.
so you can look that up. But maybe we'll have a new one coming up because this isn't going to come out for a couple months.
Yeah.
But and otherwise, go to AngelaMSanders.com and you'll find her direct, where she gets all the money directly, which is great. We'll support her to write more books. And you can also look into the books, Bait and Witch, 7-Year Witch, all of the other ones. And then what's the final one that you're writing now?
So Witch and Famous is coming out in a year. And then I'm working on another one now, but I was working on for the vintage clothing mystery, but I just had this idea about writing about a mother and her daughter, both recent widows, where the daughter has to go back to her family home because it turns out her husband has mortgaged her house a bunch of times. There's all these secrets. So I'm calling it right now, The Widow's Hollenbeck. And I don't know, it just is sticking in my mind. It could be interesting when this mother and daughter, both recent widows, get together and have to untangle the daughter's life. But if anybody wants to get in touch with me directly too, because I'm not going to put the coaching thing on my website probably for a little while, mostly because just dealing with the website is a whole issue. But you can get in touch with me at Angela M as in Marie, Sanders.com. So Angela at AngelaMSanders.com.
Yeah.
And feel free to write. Right.
Because you'll write back. And here's the cover of the book for those of you watching. And there'll be links to her website and email on my website. I know most of you have never gone to my website, but if you want to go to my website, it's askpomegranate.com, and then you'll get more information about Angela directly. And yeah, you can do what you want with that. Okay, my dears. So what a fascinating interview. Thank you for coming on Ask Pomegranate, the interview show. Apparently,
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
It was fun to have you. You're so fascinating. You're fascinated. Hang on, I gotta close this. You're fascinating, and you're fascinating and fascinated, which is really a great combination. Thanks, honey.
Thank you.